You're tuned in to More Living with Jim Brogan, broadcast live from the Brogan Financial Studios at News Talk 98.7, where old-fashioned values, expert knowledge, and genuine understanding come together to give you the retirement straight talk you deserve. Jim's a former National Advisor of the Year recipient and a financial educator, and he's here today to talk about how you can live out the best years of your life. Jim and the Brogan Financial team have been helping retirees and pre-retirees across the Southeast for over 20 years in their pursuit of financial independence. You can reach them during the week at 865-862-6800. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn, because More Living with Jim Brogan starts now.
Saturday, East Tennessee, and welcome to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. This is News Talk 98.7 WOKI. We come to you every Saturday, 9 a.m. and again at 3 p.m. I'm very pleased to have Victor Ashe on the line. Victor served as mayor for 16 years. He's had a major lasting impact on our community with miles of greenway trails and parks to the Knoxville Convention Center. And after serving as Knoxville mayor, he moved into federal positions appointed by 5 different presidents from both parties, Democrats and Republican. So today I'm pleased to have Victor Ashe, former Knoxville mayor and ambassador to Poland, and a local legend joining us today. Good morning, Victor, and welcome to More Living.
Well, it's certainly good to be here, Jim, and appreciate you including me, and I'm sorry to be a little late. But better late than never, and look forward to the questions and answers and conversation. Obviously, a lot has happened involving Poland and Ukraine and that part of the world, and it's great to see so many people who probably 2 months ago couldn't locate Ukraine on a map, but now are very conversant with where it is and its importance in the world today.
Yes, sir. So here's what I'd like to do. Is I want to go through your background first in Tennessee and Knoxville,
Sure.
And then I do want to get your impression on what's going on in Ukraine and all the refugees fleeing to Poland. Certainly you're going to have a perspective on all of that many of us do not. But let's start with Tennessee. I mean, you got your undergraduate degree, I guess, was from Yale, correct?
Correct, that's right.
And then you came to Tennessee and got your law degree at the University of Tennessee. And then you were elected to...
I was born and raised in Knoxville, right there at the building across from the faculty, where Concord Street and Nayland Drive and Kingston Pike come together. And
yes, sir. That's right. You did.
With White Towers there, used to be a hospital. It had all of 6 rooms, and my grandfather was one of the doctors that ran it with Dr. Howard, and that's where I was born in 1945.
Yes, sir.
So from day one, I've considered Knoxville home.
Yes, sir, and that's exactly right. And so I didn't mean to say like you had never been here before you came here to law school.
No, I know you didn't, and I didn't.
No, that's okay. But then you were elected to the state as a state representative in Tennessee at the age of 23. And then state senator prior to your long tenure as Knoxville mayor. So you started a long career in politics at a very young age. When you were in school at Yale and then at Tennessee Law School, did you always want to be a politician?
Well, let's put it this way. I was always interested in public service and in working with people who were elected officials. I worked for Howard Baker when he was simply a Knoxville attorney running for the U.S. Senate. And I worked for Bill Brock when he was his second term in the U.S. Congress representing Chattanooga, but he came all the way up to Loudoun County. And I won't say I knew I'd run for office, but I knew I wanted to be involved in helping make public policy. I found it fascinating. I found it impacted people, and you can accomplish a lot of good things through the influence of public policy. And that was kind of my thinking. And then when I ran in 1968, I ran the Republican primary against a sitting Republican lawmaker, and was fortunate enough to win the primary and went on to win the general election. Actually, even though I was young at 23, this is an asterisk in Knox County history, there was another person running who was only 22 And he was elected. His name is Dick Cree. He's still with us. He's a very prominent, well, he's now retired, but was a prominent attorney and served on the election commission. But he actually was elected at a younger age than I was, at age 22, and represented South Knoxville and the University of Tennessee for 4 years before he went back into private practice.
Now, then you transitioned from state legislature to mayor of Knoxville. You were elected in 1987.
Right.
Talk about
Correct.
the shift, if you could, Victor, of, so you were representing Knoxville at the state level in Nashville versus now your responsibilities as mayor. How did that shift your thinking?
Well, quite a bit, and that's a good question to ask. First of all, the jobs are totally different. As a House member, I was one of 99 people. In the Senate, I was one of 33. Unlike today, when I would have been in the majority as a Republican, in those days I was in the minority as a Republican. So I could make speeches, but very seldom was I in the majority in terms of a vote on a particular issue, at least a divided vote. And after after I'd served 15 years in the legislature, I ran unsuccessfully for the United States Senate, and then Governor Alexander asked me to head up the Americans Outdoors Commission, which looked at recreational needs across America. And one of their conclusions was, which leads to why I ran for mayor, was that if you were going to make greenways and parks a reality and increase their number across America, it needed to start at the local level, not at the federal level top down, from the local level bottom up. Because, America's most favorite park is not necessarily Yellowstone or Yosemite or the Smokies. It's the park down their street where their daughter may play soccer or their son plays baseball or whatever, and where they actually spend time. Most of us don't get to Grand Canyon more than once or twice in our life. We get the Smokies, but it's only 25 miles away. And so that's one of the reasons I ran for mayor. Then the then mayor, Kyle Testerman, was not running for re-election. And so it was an open seat. And ended up that 10 of us ran. I would say 5 were serious, credible candidates. And then the other 5 were, while they're certainly legitimate candidates, perhaps weren't as well known and weren't considered major players. I'll put it that way. And
that's really,
in the
I really like.
I went into, I didn't win outright. I got 42% of the vote, and the next person got 23. But since it wasn't 50%, he and I was former Mayor Randy Tyree. Were forced into a runoff, and ultimately I prevailed.
I really like what you said there about the parks, being the park down our street. That is so true and such a great perspective. And, of course, you really extended all the greenways and are just largely responsible for a lot of things that have happened. You worked on downtown Riverfront.
Well, and I'm proud to say, Jim, that mayors since me of different parties, Mayor Haslam, Brown, Rohero, and now Kincannon, they've all done something on parks and greenways. I mean, that's been part of their program as well. Maybe not as much as it was for me, but it's continued. And that's
well, but you started it at a time though that it wasn't talked about nearly as much. And it kind of laid some foundation for where we are now. I'll tell you what, I've got to get to our break. And, Victor, when we come back, I do want to talk a little bit more about your impact on the community in Knoxville. Then I want to dive into your perspective on Ukraine as former ambassador to Poland. So stay with us. We're visiting with long-term Knoxville Mayor Victor Ashe. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
This is More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. We're visiting with former Knoxville Mayor Victor Ashe here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. And he is Knoxville's longest-serving mayor, 16 years. And because of term limits now, that'll never be duplicated, at least under current law. And Victor, as longest-serving mayor, you had the opportunity to make a lot of long-lasting impacts on the community. We mentioned the Greenways. We mentioned the Knoxville Convention Center. There's so many. What are some of the projects, if you could pick maybe one or two, what are the ones you're most proud of most proud of?
Well, certainly, Jim, you nailed it well when you said Parks and Greenways, because that's almost my middle name in terms of my love and passion. And the nice thing about Parks and Greenways is once you put them in, your successor will not change it. If you come up with some new play plan or something like that, that could very well change after you leave. But places like Lakeshore Park there off Linesview Pike, which was actually transferred to us by Governor McWhorter when he in the state of Tennessee, having been a mental health hospital, and it's now one of the most popular parks, not just in the city but the county and in East Tennessee. But you can go all across the city in terms of parks, greenways. Secondly, planting trees all around the city in medians, for example, down Nayland Drive, down Cherry Street, down Middlebrook Pike, all those areas which now have trees in the median, we got done. And even there at the airport, as you drive down out, and it's in another county, but it's a Knoxville airport, there are trees, all of which landscape. It's good for climate control, but it's good for beautification, and it's just the right thing to do. And then obviously, we renovated a number of the senior citizen and recreation centers, Dean-Hill Recreation Center being one in particular, but John T. O'Connor. And obviously I don't mean to skip the convention center. That's a high importance, but I'm thinking more of projects that impact a particular neighborhood. The convention center is very important and good for the entire city in East Tennessee, but it doesn't impact just one neighborhood other than maybe downtown, whereas others, smaller in nature, but in terms of what they mean to individual family life, terribly important.
Absolutely. I think that's a great perspective, too. Now, let's do transition into some of your federal service, Victor. You were appointed by 5 U.S. presidents to positions at the federal level. Did you have a favorite?
Well, obviously, Ambassador to Poland was the favorite, and that was the full-time job. The other appointments, some of which required Senate confirmation, such as the public service promoting volunteerism, which actually President Clinton appointed me to, and the Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations, and then President Obama placed me on the Broadcasting Board of Governors. There were boards that met, 4-6 times a year, but weren't full time. As Ambassador to Poland, obviously, it was a full time job, and my family and I moved to Poland, and we ended up being there 5 years. I was in Poland longer than I was in college. And
so you did actually live in Poland during that entire time?
Yes, the capital is Warsaw, and every capital with which we have diplomatic relations has an embassy, American embassy, as well as a residence for the ambassador, and oftentimes other residences for American employees of the embassy. I mean, even in Kyiv, Ukraine, which was evacuated, the embassy is there. I gather it has not been attacked or damaged by some of the Russian shelling. Other parts of Kyiv obviously have been destroyed tragically. I'm almost surprised they didn't hit the embassy, but maybe they stayed away from that in terms of triggering a direct assault on the United States and American property. But whatever the reason, no, we lived in Warsaw, and I made a point of traveling the country. Poland is the fifth largest country in Europe. It's over 40 million, but it's actually smaller than Ukraine. Ukraine is 46 million people, and people don't realize that. But it's a significant country in terms of size. And in Europe, the big four are the UK, France, Italy, and Germany, and they're all larger than Poland. But after Germany comes Poland, and then Spain in terms of population. 10 million of our fellow citizens are Polish American. In fact, the joke in Poland is that Chicago is their second largest city because there are over 1 million Polish Americans that live in Chicago.
So, with your close ties to that region, Victor, we're visiting with Victor Ashe this morning, former ambassador to Poland, of course, our longest-term mayor in the city of Knoxville history. How have the events of the Ukraine-Russian war impacted you personally?
Well, in many ways. I mean, first of all, it triggers a great deal of sadness combined with outrage. If there was ever an unnecessary evil war triggered by one person, this is it, for which there is virtually no justification of any rationale. And certainly the Ukrainians, who are a sovereign nation, have been for 30 years, have freely and openly elected their leadership of different parties and different backgrounds, but always a free election. In fact, I was an election observer twice in Ukraine to observe there, not to influence the outcome, but to make sure the process was fair. And it was fair. There's no question about it. That when votes were cast, they unlike us, they're on paper ballots and put in plexiglass boxes where obviously you can see through and know that the ballot box isn't stuffed. And at the end of the day, they open up the box and pour them out on the table, and you have poll watchers watch people count them. And they're there for everybody to observe where the check mark is. And so I mean, it's the epitome of a free election. And to see, the train station attacked the other day, where 50 people, including 4 children, were murdered, and another 400, I say murdered, they were killed, but in my mind, it's murder, and it's happened all over Ukraine. And why? Because Vladimir Putin wants Ukraine to be part of Russia. I mean, even if he ever succeeded, he'd have to have an occupation force of several 100,000 to maintain control. The Ukrainians want nothing to do with Russia. They don't want to be part of Russia any more than Nova Scotia wants to be part of the United States. I mean, or North Dakota wants to be part of Canada, or Texas wants to go back to Mexico. I mean, the answer is no. They want their own country or to be part of the United States or Canada. We've been fortunate, even with differences that exist between Mexico and U.S. and Canada. By and large, there have been pretty peaceful relations, with some exceptions. But even the exceptions were ended, and by and large, it works reasonably well.
Victor, many refugees of the war are.
We now have Ukrainian refugees coming in through Tijuana in Southern California, because they've gotten to Mexico and are coming in that way. And I think it's appropriate that we accept. President Biden has said 100,000, and I think that's certainly appropriate. There are 3 million Ukrainian refugees right now, 2 million of which are in Poland. The good news is, I observed the last 3 or 4 days, as things have calmed down in Kyiv and Western Ukraine, you're starting to see a gradual return. Not huge, but I think the estimate is maybe 100,000, 200,000 have gone back to the more peaceful parts of Ukraine. Now, obviously, there's no guarantee the war won't resume again in Western Ukraine or Central Ukraine, because who could believe what Putin has to say? I mean, you wouldn't put your money on him. And,
Victor, do you think the U.S. is doing everything that we can or should to help the Ukrainians?
Well, I think we're doing better than we were. I think we should have started earlier in terms of arming them, and we need to do everything we can in providing aircraft, military hardware for them to resist Russia. I mean, the original prediction was that war would be over in 5 days or a week, and that Russia would overwhelm them. Well, if there was anything wrong in terms of prediction, it was that. And what people didn't gauge is the deep-seated, almost DNA of the Ukrainian people to fight back and to defend their homeland. I mean, I know people in the U.S., Ukrainians who were working at Starbucks or at a counter somewhere, 24, 28 years old, dropped their job and went back to Ukraine and got right in the middle of the war zone. Obviously put their, to defend their country. I mean, they didn't have to. And, they could have played it safe and just stayed here in the U.S. of A. And, Ukraine passed laws that any male between 16 and 60, could not leave the country, were subject to the draft. And they've had very few draft dodgers or resistors. I mean, even in World War II, we had draft dodgers of a couple of 100,000.
Sure.
I mean, most Americans lined up and did their patriotic duty, 95%. But we had a large number of draft dodgers. Some might have been pacifists, honest, conscientious objectors. But what I'm trying to say is Ukrainians love their country, and Putin has unified them in a way that we could never be unified. And I'm happy to say that at least on this issue, Democrats and Republicans, who seem to like to go at each other over Justice Jackson, are united on Ukraine.
We're visiting with former Knoxville Mayor Victor Ashe and former ambassador to Poland. When we come back, where's Victor Ashe now? What all's he involved with, and what's next? So stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Welcome back to More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. I'm Jim Brogan. Check out our website, broganfinancial.com. You can podcast all of our radio shows if you click on radio, also our dollars and cents segments. You can also learn about my upcoming class, Financial Survival for Retirement, through University of Tennessee's Adult Education Program. You can go to financialsurvivalforretirement.com and download a syllabus and click to register. It is on April the 26th and May the 3rd, and it is a course fee of $59. I'd love to see you there. Today we're speaking with former Knoxville Mayor and former Ambassador to Poland, Victor Ashe. All the wealth of experience he's had dealing with all kinds of different things. We've talked about his impact on Knoxville and his perspective on Ukraine, since he served as ambassador to Poland. You're now retired, Victor, and at least from your personal political career, how involved do you get in politics these days?
Well, I'm not involved in terms of running for office myself. Don't have any plans to, but certainly I support candidates that I like, and do that. And I enjoy writing a weekly column for the Shopper News Sentinel, and then spending time with my now adult children and traveling some. Obviously, the pandemic didn't travel much at all, but that seems to be ending, and we're doing better.
Now, with having served 5 federal positions, or several federal positions from 5 U.S. presidents, from Democrat and Republican, do you have any words of wisdom or advice about politics, and particularly about partisan division like we see now?
Well, there's nothing wrong in having partisan division. That's why you have 2 parties that have different points of view. But I always go back to what Senator Howard Baker used to say, is your opponent does not have to be your enemy. And because you disagree with someone doesn't mean you have to declare war and find it impossible to cooperate on the issues where you do agree. And I think that's where it's become less there should be civil discourse and civil discussion of issues as best you can, and not to renegade someone because they or denigrate them because they have a different view on a particular social issue.
You know, former U.S. Congressman Trey Gowdy, I heard him speak at an event fairly recently back in the fall, and he said something interesting, former U.S. rep from the state of South Carolina, but he said, Washington reflects our country. It is not a leading indicator. It reflects what's going on in the country. Do you agree with that comment? I thought that was pretty telling.
Well, I think so. I mean, you look at the national level where, former President Trump's still saying the election was stolen. In my mind, he lost. It wasn't stolen. And, 7 million more people voted for Joe Biden than voted for Donald Trump. Now, maybe they may or may not vote for Joe Biden again. Of course, we don't even know if Joe Biden will run again. But, the issue is, I'm one who believes once the election's over, you only have one president at a time. And while it's certainly appropriate to disagree with the president on particular issues, you still should also support the president where you agree with him. It may be few and far between, but you shouldn't put yourself in a position where someone's 100% wrong.
Victor Ashe, Victor, I'm so sorry. We're out of time. It's just flown by. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, Jim, enjoyed it very much, and everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you. That's Mayor Victor Ashe. Thank you, Chris, engineering the show. Thank you to Jill for producing the show. Today we've discussed both our community and our world, because a greater world provides for more living so you can live the best years of your life your way. Have a great weekend. This is News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
The views expressed by Jim Brogan and his guests are not that of Cumulus Media. Any discussion of financial, legal, and tax planning strategies is not intended to be individualized advice and is general in nature. Always consult with your advisor for advice specific to your needs. This program's content does not represent a recommendation of any particular security, strategy, or investment by Jim Brogan or Brogan Financial Incorporated.